now we are trying to. It's going to be a sort of French astrology day. So we have a friend, Didier Castille. You remember? He said we have to introduce the whole world to French astrology and what is so important and precious in France. And you are precisely someone who lives part of the time in America, but apparently you don't meet many local astrologers.
No.
You have never been in their big conferences, huge conferences.
No, I only go to self-help conferences. I meet lots of people who are, therapists or psychotherapists or healers or shaman, and it looks like the American people use more astrology like like a tool, but as you said, it's not questioning the tool. A tool is a tool, you use it, but they don't have so many big conferences. They have some strong astrologer that are known, and that's it. But it's no, I never met any other astrologer.
But anyway, you said the other day, you said that the people who come to you, they are interested by your special approach of the problems, of the events, and and they belong more to the school of Blitzkrieg, and you bring something complementary, different.
Absolutely, yes.
So could you develop that? I think. Well, I don't think French astrology is so much like that, but it has been a lot like that, and it has continued to be like that, especially in Belgium. I think in Belgium they are more traditionally minded than in France about this eventmental, the astrology about events and specific times, etc.
Yes, probably.
So are you felt like a French astrologer when you go there? So they think, we're going to consult the French astrologer, so what does that mean in fact?
Yes, it's, what do they like? They like that I can be pretty precise about dates of events, that I can also add some colors to the events, that I use also, introduce people's life. It's not like, some people say, well, okay, you are under a transit of Saturn, so you have to do that. I give them more latitude, or I introduce more things like the outside and what they can do. But what I like about them, the Anglo-Saxon people, because in England it's pretty much the same. It's what can I do to improve my life. It's not what is written, what is the fatalitas that is going to fall upon me. It's okay, if I have bad planets, what can I do to counteract? How can I react? How can I make things work?
That's what the way the Americans do work. And we don't do that in France so much.
Not so much. But if it's written, it must happen. But with their mind, the American mind, they work more about how can I work things out, which is really something that I like, that I appreciate. Because in all the planets you have one positive versus and one negative, so they want to use the positive side.
So what is the historical contribution of French astrology? There is Michel Gauquelin, I suppose. So,
yes.
What do you think they are? Maybe well, for instance, there is also the German astrology. Maybe you don't know about their German astrology. The German astrologers have also contributed in a very interesting way to the. But for instance, Gauquelin, does it? Have you studied him, his work?
Yes, of course, with Jacques Halbronn.
And you think it is an important contribution to the image of astrology?
Yeah, oh yes. But I don't know, because the way I'm not in any astrological stream. I meet people, I do readings for them, and that's it. So I cannot make any comparison with how they do the other astrologer work. And what also they like about me is because I do astrology, I do cards, I do several techniques, and they like that about me, and they are very, very like into channel inspiring. So there are lots of channeler, clairvoyant, channeling, and that was like the 10 last years. It was much more about what do you feel coming from the sky, and so they're much more into intuitive stuff. Well, I work in some precise area, like on the west coast or the east coast, and in the middle of the US, I have no idea about other astrologers. Because
you don't know enough. Did you compare your attitude towards astrology with other people, other women who also?
Well, I work with lots of therapists, so they use me as a compliment or as to tell them, okay, this person can work on that with that tool, or she cannot get to that point, or yes or no. And so it's just like it's much more about coaching or helping people rather than I told you at the beginning that I'm not the right person to
and so what about the André Barbeau, for instance? What would you say to Americans who could listen to us about some major figures of French astrology? For instance, in Monday astrology, have you followed his work about what happened in Europe 20 years ago, or etc.?
Yes, I've read that for years, but it's true that I don't share. In fact, when people come to see me, they know exactly what they want, they get it, and so we rarely have much time to just speak in general about astrology. And also they have a very good attitude, they are very disciplined. Okay.
On t'a pas entendu parler anglais, j'espère que tu...
Non, mais
est-ce que tu peux nous dire quelque chose sur l'astrologie française?
En anglais, non, je vais avoir du mal. En plus,
non, on peut traduire alors.
Non, en plus sur l'astrologie française... Quoi
L'astrologie française...
j'ai pas une connaissance suffisante.
Quelles sont les contributions les plus originales, what are the most original works of French astrologers? Nicolas, Barbeau, Klein, Volguil, Le Roman, who else?
I know only Barbeau. I'm sorry.
So, can you introduce us to Barbeau in these different aspects of his work, which is very complex?
Yes. I love him. It's difficult to say that like that, but I like his job he did in astrology, and through all his work, his books. He wrote a lot of books, but it is I think it is a traditional astrology, we can say. But
well, in a certain way, yes, but. He has made some original contributions.
Yes, about the cycle, for example.
Yes.
And
his connection with psychoanalysis, I don't know if it's very original.
Yes, it was original.
You remember that?
Yes.
His book, De la psychanalyse à l'astrologie.
Yes, that was a very good one. It was exactly at the time where everybody was starting to work on themselves, and so once all of a sudden you could use your chart and develop that and work, and yes, and that was a great contribution. Yeah.
Maybe 30 years ago.
No? It was 1960. It was
60s, yes,
nearly 50 years ago, in fact. Yes.
Yes. So yes, very original, and yeah.
And what about you? You have never been interested by Jean-Pierre Nicolas?
No, I heard about him, but I don't know him.
Because I think it's where I will speak a little about him. So what about the work of Barbeau on cycles? It is very strong.
I think so. I read a book on Avenir, future of astrology, and it is nice to read that with the cycle, and he built two different cycles, and up to now it's not too bad.
What are these cycles? You mean
it is a concentration of the planets.
Ah, yes.
He called about the first year,
the beginning of the year. The first month.
L'année primordiale, enfin l'année où tout commence. Et sa théorie.
No, English.
English, sa théorie, c'est théorie.
Theory.
It's that at the first, all the planets were on the same line.
All right. Yes.
This is the great year. They call it the great year.
Oh yes. But
and the cycle start from that.
No, I don't think so. It is another source. It's theory. His theory is what we call the concentration of the planets. Right? It has nothing to do with any first year, which is connected with Aquarius. No, something else. He studies if the slow planets from Jupiter to Pluto are concentrated in a certain specific and rather limited part of the zodiac. No? The more they are gathered in a brief part of the zodiac, the more it is dangerous for humanity.
Yeah.
And when these planets are dispersed or scattered all over the zodiac, it would be a period of détente and peace. But this system hasn't been very much confirmed, I would say. What had received more success is a story about the cycle of Saturn and Neptune, connected with the history of Russia and communism.
Yes, I remember that one.
1917, the October Revolution, then 36 years later, the death of Stalin, and 36 years later, the 1989 events, etc. So it has been considered abroad also as an important prediction. But it is based on a total. He has worked in so many directions. So at the same time, so when he was young, because he built his theory about Saturn and Neptune in 1950, before he developed his work on the concentration of the planets. So in fact, this is as we say, une œuvre de jeunesse. It's a work of youth, you know, and. His system about the concentration of planets, I don't know if you were practicing astrology in the 1970s.
I started in 72.
So we were all expecting very important events in the 1980s, which never occurred really,
no.
not comparatively with the First or Second World War. So this was not very satisfying. Another aspect of Barbeau, which is not very convincing, it's what he said about the future of Soviet Union. Because in 1960s, you know, when there was a Sputnik and there were a great deal of success in Russia about sending people into space, he wrote that Russia will probably be at the same level as America in the next 10 years, etc. So it's mitigated. It is a mixed result and balance of. But what was interesting in what he's done, theoretically speaking, is that in his system about the planets gathered in the zodiac, he was not considering the zodiac. In his, it was not important if this group of planets were in Taurus or in Scorpio or in Capricorn. The point was they were together. And when he speaks about the Saturn-Neptune, it's not important either if conjunction takes place in a certain sign or not. So there was a sort of tendency to get rid of the zodiac as a significant part. Although he wrote from another side, as you know, he wrote also, he was also responsible for a collection on the zodiac, but, which is still famous.
Yes.
But his pioneer work was precisely to avoid the zodiac, to forget the zodiac, you see. And this is a very interesting point. In fact, even in his system about the concentration of planets, it was not important what planet.
Yes, just the group of planets.
You know, it's also interesting. You forget that it doesn't matter if it is Pluto or Saturn or Jupiter.
Yeah.
The point is how many planets are together. You see.
So the more planets you have,
yes. So no problem. No, doesn't matter what zodiac, what sign of zodiac. Doesn't matter what are the planets which are gathered. The important is the global. It's also gestalt. You know, sort of general impression of planets gathered together. And I think what was a rather original approach now about Nicolas, Jean-Pierre Nicolas, he was also someone who tried to get rid of mythology, because in fact what I've just said, if you don't consider the name of the planets, just how big they are, how distant they are, if you don't consider the name of the signs, it was what Barbeau has done, but Nicolas has done the same. He said, forget about the symbols of the signs, forget about the names of the planets. We are trying to find new criteria which have nothing to do with this tradition. We are defining the planet Mars because it's at a certain place in the systems, in the solar system, or because it has a certain volume. I don't want to know what it is, what it is called. Or we are going to define Taurus because it is in a certain season and that the day is longer than the night, things like that, you know. So in these two cases, we can consider that French astrology is emancipated from the symbolism, and with Gauquelin obviously also. Because for Gauquelin, obviously, although his research has confirmed in a certain way the attributions, the classical attributions. But he was not starting from that. He just said, well, I take a certain group of people who are making a certain job, let's see what happens, what are the planets which are ascending, rising or not, and he found certain things. So it is an old tradition which is started with Paul Chouinard, you know, at the end of the 19th century, scientific astrology, to rebuild the Renaissance of astrology, to build astrology from scratch, without any prejudices about, well, etc. And on the other hand, there is another school which is a school which we could call structural, which are trying to reform the tradition, to reform the symbolism, like Néroman or Jean Carteret. This is another school which is also important. For instance, I think the question of rulerships has been probably much more approached in France as abroad, changing even Elisabeth Pogo, which with Italian was much influenced by French astrologers, and she dedicated it.
Elisabeth Pogo, I can kind of remember that she actually attributed Pluto as the master of Gemini or something.
Yes, according to a certain system. Yes, it was not just one case. She was not thinking about one specific case. She was considering the whole system, the whole system, the whole geometry of the system, not just one case like that.
Yes, yes, I remember. I worked with her for a little while. I worked with her book for a little while,
yes,
and then I gave
up. The French edition, published in 1974. Yes, and so these are contributions of French astrology to two theoretical aspects. You see.
Yeah.
But of course, there is also the case of Dan Rudyard, who is French-American astrologer. Maybe you know more about Rudyard.
Yes, Rudyard. Well, I'm not into his kind of... my friend Nadine de Lidekerk, she is very Dan Rudyard.
So was he French in a way, in his way of approaching astrology, or was it more influenced by theosophical ideas? Or
yes, but I know there was a stream at some point where you know, being an astrologer, you were supposed to know everything about Rudyard, and it was considered good to be in his stream of thinking.
Yes.
And I didn't like it at that time. No, I was already starting to be very practical and grounded, and less moving more into a tuition level. Maybe there are some other astrologers you could interview for about Dane Rudyard.
Yes. Yes, I suppose so. Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah. And then later on we had the book with the North Node and South Node. He's an American guy. What's his name?
You mean American influence? And,
After
Martin Schulman?
Schulman, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And others. Yes, this is the point. French astrology, when we describe French astrology, then we understand that there is a foreign influence upon French astrology. You know? That is in fact that this French astrology, which was the astrology of the 60s,
Sure. Yeah.
because Barbeau has published his book on mundane astrology, his first book in 1960s. Afterwards, in the last 30 years, we fell under the influence of Anglo-Saxon astrology, karmic astrology,
Yes.
and the nodes, and
Yes.
and many. Irène Andrieux,
Yes.
Larzul, etc., and even especially of Rudyard, and for instance. There was also the influence of computers, and for instance, I remember that, for instance, the progressions, directions, they were nearly abandoned in the 60s, you know, in favor of the transits, etc. And Rudyard, with all his reputation, he has given a new chance to these progressions, you know, and this is something which has nothing to do with real astronomy, for instance. It is a problem of it is not. It doesn't correspond to the real movement of the planets. And thanks to the computers, the difficulties which were connected with all this primary direction, secondary direction, have been solved. You know, and people, instead of being reasonable and think, oh well, it's too heavy, it's too complicated, they just have to rely on their computers, and it was. Excuse me. So we have we tried to characterize what were the most important contribution has stopped in the 60s. In the last 40 years, we have been colonized by American astrology, by this fascination for the new planets, the new asteroids. Although the question of the black moon is a French contribution in a way.
Yeah, sure,
I don't know if the American... no, but before Joël de Graven, already in Neo-Roman. I mean, it has been also something which the French astrologers have developed. Is it now accepted abroad?
Absolutely.
Yes. Where have you been? How do you know that? Have you been?
About books that sometimes I go in.
They mention Lilith and
they mention Lilith. Yes.
So we can also consider. For instance, it's very interesting. Someone like John Adey, who was a great French English astrologer, he became a commentator. He made commentaries about Gauquelin. So in fact, Gauquelin was not just a statistician. He was also used to build what is called the harmonics. Maybe you never heard of it. It was a very popular system of ASP, a very original system based on Gauquelin. Now, what is the future of French astrology in the 21st century? And who are the people who have contributed the most in the last years to the progress of astrology? After this period, which was where Alexander Ruperti was very important, his death, I mean, it has been a period of 30 years when astrology was under the charm of Ruperti, of karmic, spiritual astrology.
Yes.
And
American people are very much into spiritual astrology.
yes. And I remember when I went to England in the first time in 1971, I think, 37 years ago, in the conferences which were held in universities at this time. And the first time I heard something like karmic astrology, and I could not identify the word karmic because the word karmic was so strange to French astrology that I was not imagining that it was the word, the adjective which was used in connection with astrology.
Yeah.
So, well, I think very modestly that I have received the heritage of this French astrology of Nicolas, Barbeau, Néroman, who tried to change certain things in astrology, and especially in the field of mundane astrology. But I've been much more radical than Nicolas, since I only keep one planet. I keep one planet. I don't take the zodiac. I don't take the new planets. I don't take the chart, the natal chart. But I accept the fixed stars. And which have been totally evacuated
Yes.
by Barbeau and Nicolas, etc. And I have revalued, re-estimated the four royal stars: Aldebaran, Antares, Formado, Dragos, which are totally unknown from the students of astrology. I don't think that Berton was. Sometimes they were putting them in the chart in conjunction, but
yes.
never in terms of cycles. For instance, nobody has written about the conjunction of Saturn with Aldebaran or with Regulus, etc.
No,
and this duality of planet in connection with a star is something which has totally disappeared from astrology.
Yes.
And I think it has to be reinstalled as a major element of astrology. So this tendency of decantation, of simplifying astrology, is or simplifying astrology or improving its coherence, which is also a matter of simplification. I mean, that's something which is not eclectical, which is not made of all sorts of knowledges which are not compatible together. This transparency, this attempt to bring transparency to astrology, coherence, simplicity, clarity, which are qualities which are accepted to be characteristic of French mind, of French genius. I think we have to restore them. But so do you have other people in France which are promising
Les énagrammes?
Non,
les figures qu'on peut sur les aspects.
So what is the idea? They are classifying the charts according to
the aspect of the planet.
It makes a sort of drawing, of design. And each design...
yes, but I heard about that, but I never practiced, and I heard about comment dire cerf-volant,
escape.
Non,
Skate.
Non, il y a
Kite.
Kite. Il y a un deuxième mot.
Oh, no, there are many names like that. Apropos, what about Berton? We don't forget Berton, because Berton, he has created all sorts of names complex of all sorts of people. So can you remember vaguely some of these proposals? Because this has not been translated in English.
No, he should.
So tell us about that, which is more personal.
Prometheus complex. It was about Uranus and how you can use it, and all the people who are, kind of have a mission on Earth to discover new streams of thinking, and what else? He found out about how you can discover if somebody is gay or no, about all the homosexuality aspects and all that. What else? What other complex? Failure complex, about the relationship between Sun and Saturn and how between their interaction you can have a failure attitude in your life. What else? Many, yes.
And do you use these informations when you interpret a chart?
At the beginning, yes, long time ago. Well, the one that I still use because it's practical and useful is complex of failure, of course. And but yes, the first 7 years I used it a lot. But like you forget about the zodiac and about this and about that. By the year, you simplify your work. You do something that is more more clarity
synthetic,
and more synthetic. But yes, the first 7 years I used all the tools of Berton, and right now, like if I have someone who is under a major work on themselves or therapy and they want to hear about that, then I use it. But for regular people with regular problems, then I don't use it.
So who are the most important astrologers? You don't know. So you don't know so much American astrology. So you have not
some books like, but I don't remember.
You've read Arroyo, people like that, or?
Yes, well, I think I've read them all, but if I can use them for reading, I do. Otherwise, I put the book back on the shelf, and like of course you surf on all these possibilities of exploring. You read the book, you study, and then you check. Can you apply that to real life or not? If I don't, then I forget about it.
So you are someone who combines different knowledges
all the time.
So could you tell us about that too? So what, for instance, in France also there is a certain tradition to use tarot, which is a very French book in a certain way. Are you practicing tarot yourself? No, you are, because Barbeau did. That was also a very strong taboo in French astrology. Never mix with anything like tarot or clairvoyance, something which, and progressively this taboo has been left. I mean, it has been forgotten.
Oh, absolutely. I remember years ago, the fact that I was having clairvoyance was like, oh, she's not a real astrologer, so I was kind of despised and not smart enough because I was using intuitive.
So the derogation.
Absolutely.
Like the noble people in France, they are derogating.
Noble people are only astrologer and clairvoyant, just like the lower level, like, so I didn't care so much. Maybe that's the reason why I got some distance with real, traditional astrologer. And anyway, I love to explore all the time. So every year I'm looking for something new to explore and discover and use. So even going to the Enneagram, I went there, didn't like it so much. Then I came back to, and there is a time where the more you study, you lose in clarity, and you want to go back to something that is easier or more accessible or easier to transmit to people you talk to.
I obviously, once someone takes a card of the pack and he gets some special card, he cannot. It speaks to him much more than anything else, because the chart is hermetic, Kabbalistic.
Absolutely.
And so it is it is something striking.
Absolutely. And it's funny because people have their rituals, so you have the people, they get the card and they put, and when they choose one, they like this, wanting to feel, or you have the people who just take one by one. So they all have the kind of a ritual and the relationship with the card, and of course, you know, when they fall on the death, oh my God! So death is still taboo, and then you have to explain to them that death is not always death, and all that, and yeah, and using also some other cards. Those are Mushri, and it's still related to astrology, and I like them because for me, you know, they help me to get just sensations, images, and feelings, and that's it. But I think that by the end of my life, I will be only working on the intuitive level, and maybe I'm going to get rid of all the tools.
Ah, yes.
I'm coming closer to that.
To come to function without the help of any external
I
technique.
already do. You know, like yesterday was so funny. I used to have a Japanese massage woman, and she was massaging, and I was telling her this and that and that. And yesterday she just sent me an email, and she said, "You told me this, yes, it happened. You told me that." And just like, did I talk so much when she was, you know, doing all the massage? And well, yes, and everything is happened. So now she wants more. What's next? And so, I can have the proof, but it's more comfortable up to now to work with tools. It's maybe for lazy people, then you have those tools. Like you can rely on something that is outside of you, because you have to make another kind of effort to just use your intuition.
So what do you think, Patrick Brisset? You think really it is in the interest of French astrology to combine and to compromise with other types of knowledge like tarot or whatever, or as astrology to find its real specific way and its specific application?
I think that's one way, but because it's easier for me. If I begin to mix many things, maybe I will lost. Will be lost, maybe. But for you, it's nice. Yes. You can do that, and even massage. No.
Massage, yes.
And aura.
You do massage.
No, I was
okay.
getting massage.
You get.
She receives.
You receive. Yes. Okay. And during the message, you speak. You were speaking.
So you think you tend to be more skeptical about the interest for astrology too.
Yeah, and I was interested by the line of
the palmistry.
Yeah, but
Chirology.
I never studied.
Or graphology also.
Graphology, no. But the line of mine, and it was. I was interested by that, but I never followed this.
Well, what I think about what you just said, I must say that I'm in the logic of most astrologers who try to explain everything through astrology. When you have this sort of mission to understand and to decode everything, decipher everything which exists in the world, astrology might be insufficient to achieve that aim. But if you, on the contrary, if you try to redefine and clarify not only what is astrology, but what is the application of astrology, what is the aim of astrology, I think, for instance, I think it's very nice to practice tarot, but I think it is not. It may be something which can complete astrology, which can be added to astrology.
That's how I use it.
And in a certain way, paradoxically, I am in favor of the people who know about other sciences than astrology, because it will avoid them, it will prevent them from considering astrology as this sort of knowledge. And if you practice if you don't practice tarot, you will consider astrology as a tarot. So I prefer people to practice tarot and leave astrology where it has to be left. You know, I mean, it is also I think that we should not ask astrology to be to play the role of a pack of cards. And on the contrary, as we return to the discussion we had before, if astrology is more general, is giving more general tendencies, then of course something else is necessary, which will give more precisions, you see. And in a certain way, I like the word astromancy.
Yes.
Astromancy, which is not astrology. For instance, the chart, the reading of the chart is astromancy, it's not astrology. It's a divinatory application of astrology, which is not based on the same scientific basis as astrology. And I think this distinction is quite a good one. Leave to astrology what is in the field of astrology, which is the major cycles, the major configurations, things which will really affect the whole world, and also, by consequence, every one of us in a way. And when it is about the fact that, because maybe people say, well, the clients is asking, the clients are asking, they want answer to this and that. So what can I do? So I have to use astrology. So there is a sort of astrology which is made for those clients, which affords to give simple answer to what should I do tomorrow, where should I go, etc. And it is not the same fight, the same problem as the real astrology. It is an astrology which is more individualistic, more feminine in a way, more connected with the real experience of life and the real problems that people have in their lives as individuals. But it is, sometimes we have this expression in French, the remedy is worse than the disease. And sometimes when we want to help astrology, we on the contrary, we build its tomb and we prepare its death. So I think it is maybe time to divorce. There was a divorce between astronomy and astrology, and maybe there should be a divorce between mundane astrology or cyclical astrology or general astrology and individual and practical astrology, because they don't have the same basis. As you said, for instance, on one side you have an astrology which tries to understand why collectively we react to certain major signs in the sky, in the heaven, and this can be studied statistically, and there is some, you can defend this sort of astrology in a way, even in the scientific circles. And on the other side, we have the profession of astrologer, what people say, the practitioner of astrology. This is a new expression today. And these practitioners of astrology, they are doing their best. They are trying to answer to the question of their clients. And actually, astrology has always had these two faces. For instance, when people say, I am Sagittarius or I'm Scorpio, they know they are not the only person who is Sagittarius or Scorpio. You know? So this image of astrology is not at all an individual image. You know? To say I am Taurus is not, I am the only person who is Taurus. Taurus is what defines me. No, it may be a key to understand the person, but it's not, they know that there are millions of people who are Taurus. See? And when they are connecting themselves to astrologers tell them, no, this is not interesting to be of a certain solar sign. What is important is to build a chart, and then you will really know who you are and what you are specifically, personally, individually. You see? So there are a sort of struggle, inner struggle, even in the image of astrology.
Yeah.
What is astrology is supposed to help us to find the group to which we belong. And to say I'm Sagittarius is also the expression of a sort of difficulty to belong to somewhere. You know? Astrology tells us to what we belong, and at the same time, the astrology of the astrologer doesn't answer to this question. They say who you are, but not to whom you belong.
Yes, and that's why when people announce that they are Taurus, or do you belong to my tribe, or yes, so they try to connect, or sometimes this morning I had a woman and she was telling me that she meets only Cancer guys, so it's Cancer and Cancer and Cancer, and making a law that Cancer are not good for me, but I keep meeting them. And I don't make it in purpose, but only Cancer men are attracted to me. So she just notices it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Although you can be skeptical about this sort of astrology, in any way, this is quite a positive approach, because astrology tells us to which group we belong, and we of course, maybe it's more interesting to see to which planet the person belongs than to see to which sign it belongs, she belongs. Maybe we can discuss about this fact, but one of the missions of astrology is to say to what group people belong. Although I myself I'm also skeptical about that, even from this point of view. For instance, I'm not totally convinced by the work of Gauquelin, for instance. I believe it is very difficult to imagine, really, that the planets have to do something with the fact that we were born for a certain profession. I think the fact of having a certain profession is an existential decision, and we are not so much limited at that.
We're not anymore.
Yes, but it's true that people were limited. But in fact, this is a trap, I think. This is a trap, this is a lure. It's true that Gauquelin could find books where there were lists of dates for all the people who had been successful generals or successful scientists, etc. These documents do exist, but do we have to confirm this? At the same time with the division between the states, do we have to show that astrology has something to do with people who are French or Russian or English? Is astrology responsible for the fact that the world is divided into 120 different states? Is it something which has to do with astrology? So on one side, I think that astrology is not responsible for what we do individually, but on the other side I also am skeptical about the fact that astrology should explain the different professional groups or the different national societies. I think astrology has something universal. I mean, it is sort of major cycle, which can be analyzed and observed in the groups, even they are very different, very far from one another. One of the problems with Barbeau is precisely, and that is one thing that I regret, this idea is encouraging with this cycle about Saturn-Neptune. Can one say that Saturn-Neptune is specially dedicated to a certain country, a certain nation, which is Russia, and not to another country? I am very doubtful about that. I think on the contrary, but what is very convincing in astrology is when you can show that even in countries which are very different from one another, you have at the same time certain factors which correspond. For instance, now we are in a mondial, in a very global society. This idea of an astrology which would separate societies and state one from another is also maybe a mirage for astrological research, you see. So I think astrology, so what we are going to finish this discussion. So how could you define, Patrick, what is astrology?
I can't.
Try to say it in a few words. What should be astrology? What could be astrology?
What could be? I have to think about that a long time before I answer you. It's too large problem. It's too large.
What it is not?
Huh?
What is not astrology?
What is not astrology?
What you want? What you think astrology is not?
It's science.
It's not a science?
No.
It's not a science. It should not be considered and approached as a science. So what it is? An art? What is the word to which group of knowledge will you connect astrology? Is astrology a sort of knowledge completely different from other knowledges, or is it to be connected with psychology or with whatever?
Yeah. It's part of knowledge of human
nature
and activities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. Like sociology, psychology, maybe philosophy. I don't know, but.
And do you think that psychology? Do you think that psychologists are ready to accept astrology as a part of their family?
Maybe
Rosine, bramly?
when it's going to be over, it's not going to be a problem. Then it's going to be integrated without any problem. But right now, no. Some psychologists are okay to use astrology as an additional tool sometimes, but not yet. It's
You think it's not so obvious for a psychologist? Why do you think psychologists are not ready to accept astrology? What is their problem? You have to understand and to feel why they have a problem with astrology. If it is, like Patrick says, if it is a study of human being, human psychology, why should it be a problem? What do they have against astrology, these people?
It is historically, because astrology has been always, no, not always, but actually it's rejected.
Yes, and they cannot. They are prisoners of this rejection.
I think so.
Just a matter of prejudice. It is a black sheep or something like that. A pariah.
Pariah, it's not too bad.
They use the word pariah.
Yes, they do.
So I have
Pariah
this.
and also clown, non, pas clown, farfelu.
Queer.
Queer,
Odd science.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the image is like that.
And you think there is something there's a way to change this image?
The way is like comment s'appelle l'astrologue Tessier want to do.
Elisabeth Tessier?
Yeah, Elisabeth Tessier.
How did she think to manage?
But she has been to the university to have.
Yes, but she has passed a thesis in sociology. But is it enough to change the statute of astrology?
It's not enough, but she tried to do something in this way. But it's difficult because maybe too much farfelu.
Queer aspect, queer image.
Maybe, yeah.
But it is true. You think it's true that it is queer? It is true that it is a little unexpected to understand a person by looking at the stars. I don't know. Maybe for you it is obvious, but in a way it may be considered as far-fetched.
Mm. Yeah, it's strange because many people like to understand that an astrologue can say on their life, but it is like that. It is outside, or I don't know exactly
yes.
to explain. You know, they like to have they like the astrologer can speak about them, but it's that, only that. They are not sure it's, I think, something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, all the people who are against astrology, they never had their chart made, or they never had any curiosity, so they just are critical out of nothing. So I noticed that some of my clients who came just because a girlfriend told them to come to me and like, well, oh no, I don't do astrology. And then when you start to do astrology, but that's smart, that's logical, that's sensible, it has a distance and it's standard, but they have to come to us and check. But all the people who are really, really critical, I don't know, it's like an old bias or, as you said, prejudice, and they don't want to go get into it, and they don't dare to try the experiment. Once they've done that, once they like it, they come back and they want to know more.
But is it possible for a astrologer to obtain an agreement about their knowledge? What is the difficulty to obtain this
to make that collectively
this approval?
Well, I even have some clients for 20 years, and I have one specifically said, well, after 20 years of experience with you, I can say I trust. It's a good tool, and I can give you a refer, and I can say that I come and see you. But for years, it was just like, I don't know you, don't mention my name ever, which I don't do anyway, but don't mention, I don't know you.
Yes.
And it's very good.
I haven't been here.
Yeah.
Well, I think...
you don't burn the witches anymore, but still.
We come back to the discussion we had in French at the beginning of the afternoon. It is, what is to know yourself? Astrology... I don't think astrology should try to do the same as psychology, I think it should bring some, not only because it has different tools, but it should study another aspect of the psychology of the people, not the same aspect. And so what would be this specific astrological aspect? But,
well, what takes psychology 10 years to discover? You just read a chart, and you win lots of time, because as soon as you read a chart, you can say there is this, that, and it doesn't take like 10 years of lying on the bed. Astrology is a tool that makes you win years.
Yes. So this is an argument. The fact that astrology makes things quicker. But apart from that, does it catch the psychology of the person, of the problems, the existential problems of the person, with a different angle? Not just because it uses the planets, but for instance, all the problem of time. Astrology has something to do with time.
A psychologist can tell you when you're going to resolve the problem.
The time.
The time. Yes, you can give some dates of events, or you can just, and that's something only astrology can do. Even with the tarot, even with the cards you can read, colors, people, give different aspects of an event.
Yeah, but for instance, I have been thinking about this argument recently, about the time. But for instance, this question of time is not so convincing as it can seem, because, for instance, let us say that I say, well, what will happen to me next month? I can take a card of the tarot, and the tarot will tell me what it is about this month,
Yes.
So from this point of view, I can, and at the same time, for instance, I say what is going to happen to me this year. If you make a chart for this year, it will give you, you can always precise in advance for what time you are working. And then you can use any sort of answer to say this answer will be connected with the time I have defined at the beginning. If I say the next 3 months, I take the cards and I will say this is good for the next 3 months.
Oh, absolutely, and yes, and that's
So it's not that original to astrology. It is original to divination. Any sort of divination can be connected with time. You can always divine and connect it with a certain year, a certain day, a certain month, a certain whatever.
Absolutely. Well, that's maybe that's the way I do things is like I am reading on my card some event, and then I'm looking on the chart when it's going to happen.
Yes, I know. You do that, but you could do otherwise.
Yes.
You could do without astrology, in fact. The fact of saying that certain things which will happen at a certain moment, of course you cannot, if you have a pendulum, for instance, you could even put a certain number of years on a map and see where the pendulum goes, if it goes in a certain year or not. I mean, it is not a very good point to say that all these divination systems are supposed not to be able to speak of time. You just give the framework of time, and you say, well, I want to know about now. I want to go about next year. Tell me answer. So if this is not enough to define astrology, because this sort of astrology, this sort of answer, you can have answer without astrology. Astrology has certainly to do with time, but I think it has to do with major moments.
Oh yes.
Major moments.
Only the big. That's why when you use the
but astrology is often used for even for very small moments, very small events. So the question is, we come back to a sort of more general astrology, which will give you the main structures. And if you want to know more, then you have to use a form of different sort of mancies or definitions.
Yes.
And the question which we are discussing in France today is precisely what would be the major cycle. Could we agree about a certain cycle which would be considered as the major thing, with the major time, which will not be the theory of the transits, because any transit you can have transits all the time. The question is to define major configurations and see how all the different people live through these configurations. The idea of transit is something else.